All right, fam. Your boy is back, the Vegas Eagle. It's been a little bit of a hiatus, but I came back for the bye week. We're getting close to Thanksgiving, which means it's whiteboard season. The Eagles are on a tear, 8-1. You'll have to take my word for it, but I'm 9 for 9 on my game-by-game predictions for the season. I had us 13-4. I had us only losing at the Jets, at the Cowboys, and let's see, I also had us losing at Kansas City was the other loss that I had, and then the Buffalo Bills. I also had us losing too. That may slightly change, but those were my four losses for the season. So far I'm 9 for 9. I even nailed the Jets game, albeit that was before Aaron Rodgers got hurt. Was when I made that prediction. But anyway, we move on. We're 8-1. We're in a great spot. The surprising Detroit Lions are that team that's lingering. There really is no realistic chance for any of the other teams to catch the Eagles, um, assuming one or two things happen, which I'll go through. So I did a little whiteboard session for the tiebreakers with the Lions because, importantly, we don't play the Lions this year. So the first tiebreaker with them is out. The second tiebreaker is conference record. And right now, we're one game ahead. We have zero NFC losses. The Lions lost their one NFC game to the Seattle Seahawks. So we're +1 on that tiebreaker. Now, if we finish tied in the NFC conference record, it goes to a third tiebreaker, which is common games, which I'll get to in a little bit. And if for whatever reason they would be tied after the common games, which is possible, as you'll see, the fourth tiebreaker is strength of victory, which basically is a collective record of all the teams that you beat. And then the better percentage is the tiebreaker on that point. So I have no idea really how to calculate that at this point. So I'm just going to go through the first tiebreaker, which again is out because we don't play the Lions, but the second, which is NFC record, and the third, which is common games record. So right now we're 8-1. Our only loss was to the Jets. So we have zero NFC losses. I have listed here, and here the remaining NFC games for the Eagles and the Lions. Again, we're +1 right now because we have zero NFC losses and the Lions have one. All right. So I also put here in brown the AFC games that we have left, which is at Kansas City and Buffalo at home. I believe we're going to split those. So I think we'll probably lose at Kansas City, and then the next week we beat Buffalo at home. Buffalo just looks really disjointed so far this year, and they lost a really bad game tonight to Denver. So taking that into account, if we lose to Kansas City and we beat Buffalo, Detroit would gain a game on us. We would both have two losses. But again, as far as the tiebreaker is concerned, we remain +1 because Kansas City is in the AFC. So, okay, here are the remaining NFC games. So, again, we're +1 at this point. For the Eagles, we have the 49ers, and at the Cowboys, at Seattle, Giants, Cardinals, and then at Giants. I'm going to ignore the last three here because those are easy wins. We're not losing to the Giants or the Cardinals. So, with those three wins in place, I believe the game of the year is San Francisco at Philadelphia because the Niners right now have three losses. And if we beat them and give them a fourth loss, plus we would then have the head to head tiebreaker on them, the Niners are not going to catch the Eagles for the one seed. And again, even if they finish tied, we have the tiebreaker, so we would be ahead. So I'm not so this whole chart assumes we beat the 49ers because that it really is the game of the year. So assuming we beat the 49ers, we lose at Dallas, which I think is definitely going to be a loss. That we split with them every year, and winning down there is going to be really tough. It's possible, but I really think we're going to lose that game. And then at Seattle, I'm not even sold this is going to be a loss, but I think that the spot is really tough because you're coming off of the Dallas game on Sunday night and then go back home and then fly across the country to Seattle. which is a really, really tough place to play. And we haven't beaten Seattle in like, I believe they've beaten us 7 straight times. And the last time we beat them was like 2008. It's been a really, really long time since we beat Seattle. So let's just say we lose these two, these two games in the NFC. And again, we would lose to Kansas City, but again, that's out of the conference. So losing to Kansas City, Dallas, and Seattle would give us 4 losses for the season. We would finish 13-4. So let's turn to the Lions. Again, they're 7-2 right now. We need to get them, as many losses obviously as possible. But looking at their schedule, it's soft. I'm ignoring a game against Denver that they have at home in this chart because it's not an NFC game, and they're almost certainly going to win that game at home. So here are their NFC remaining games. Chicago at home. I just don't see the Bears going into Detroit winning. Green Bay at home, a little bit better, but Green Bay looks disjointed, really, and really just not that good of a team at all right now. Then they're at the Saints. This is possible, but I'm gonna be somewhat conservative and say they pull it out in New Orleans. But that is a game they could lose. At Chicago, again on the road division game. It's not a gimme, and this game in Chicago is going to be in mid-December outdoors. So we'll see how good Jared Goff is when you put him in 10-degree weather with wind chills at 0 in December. So okay, that brings us to at the Vikings, and they have 2 games at the end against the Vikings. They are not going to sweep Minnesota. Minnesota's a legit team, and now they have Josh Dobbs. They've won 5 in a row. This guy is. I'm not saying he's some sort of Pro Bowler, but he is a guy who can play and win games. And I just don't see Detroit. At no way do they sweep Minnesota. I think they'll lose the game in Minnesota and probably win the game at home. So then you're looking at this game at Dallas, which of course, ironically, we're going to have to root for Dallas, in my opinion, at this point. We're going to have to root for the Cowboys to beat the Lions in Dallas because it's going to help us secure that number 1 seed. So if you add it up here, that gives the Lions to 4 losses at Minnesota, at Dallas. So you see here, it's even here for the future games. But keep in mind, we're already 1 game ahead. So if this plays out this way and they lose these 2 games, or maybe it's the game at New Orleans instead of the game against Dallas, or you flip just 2 of these 4 games on the road for Detroit to lose. And as long as we take care of business at home, we beat the 49ers, beat Buffalo, maybe you lose to Kansas City, who cares? And then you lose at Dallas, at Seattle. We'd be 13-4, they'd be 13-4, but we own the tiebreaker, which is enormous to then get the number 1 seed. So if though it remains tied here, if for some reason an unorthodox chain of events happens and we get tied with Detroit and tied on the NFC, it goes to common games. So here is where that Kansas City game actually means a good amount. The Buffalo game, for purposes of tiebreakers, means nothing. It's out of the conference, and there's no common game with Buffalo because Detroit doesn't play them. But Detroit did play Kansas City, and they beat them. So it would hurt us, obviously, if we lose to Kansas City because then we lose out on a common game. Seattle, though, Detroit's already lost to them. So that game is big for the common games tiebreaker. And then the Vikings, we've already beaten them. They haven't played them yet. So obviously that becomes important. They have 2 games against Minnesota. The Cowboys, we're hoping they're going to lose to the Cowboys. Again, we've played them twice. We've already beaten them once. So in the pink is where you see my prediction of what has not happened yet. In the blue is what's already happened here. And Tampa Bay, again, both teams have already beaten Tampa Bay. So there's your common game. So it is possible that they could be tied at 3-3, 3-3 on common games. And again, we would then go to the strength of victory tiebreaker, which gets really, really complicated. But the bottom line is this is the map that I think is a lot more plausible in how it could play out. And it is very, very likely that if we can get to 13-4, I think we have smooth sailing. But we have to beat San Francisco. Because what you don't want to have happen is San Francisco then gets involved if they're tied with us, and they would have a tiebreaker. Now they already have 3 losses, so if they beat us, we would have to hope they lose 2 more times. And San Francisco's schedule, they do play Seattle twice, so you figure they probably split with Seattle. but their schedule is not super difficult. They do have the Ravens though at home on Christmas, which is not going to be an easy game for them. But the remaining part of their schedule, from what I remember, is not super difficult at this point. So we'll see on that. And as far as the Cowboys are concerned, they also have 3 losses right now, but they have games like at Buffalo, at Miami, and I feel safe to say they're going to get to 5 losses one way or the other. And they also have two games against the Commanders too. And Washington plays them tough. These division games are not gimmies, so they could lose once to Washington. They play them on Thanksgiving, and then the last game of the year is at Washington for them. So we'll see. I feel very comfortable though that Washington and Dallas are going to be out of this, so that if we finish 13-4, we don't have to worry about teams like Dallas and San Francisco, as long as we beat San Francisco in this game, so we can get that tiebreaker. So that Niners game is the game of the year. So again, I think we're in great shape. We'll see what happens against Kansas City. Maybe we can steal one on the road at Arrowhead off the bye. But Andy Reid off the bye, and we have Dallas Goedert out. I'm pessimistic that we're going to pull that game out in Kansas City. But take care of business against Buffalo the next week at home, and then get ready for the game of the year against the 49ers. So that's where we are. I'll keep you guys posted as we move along into whiteboard season to get that 1 seed, which is so critical to go to the Super Bowl. Super Bowl here in Vegas. We're going. All right, fam. The Vegas Eagles back. I'll try to update a little bit more as we get closer to the playoffs. And fam, let's get back to the Super Bowl and take care of business this year. All right.